What's up, fellow polymaths? In this video of the Java Fundamentals tutorial, we'll be going over strings. Strings are a sequence of characters that are used to store text. So you can think about a string like a string of yarn, for example. You have a ball of yarn, and within that ball of yarn, you can basically just prod a bunch of that string of yarn. And then once you felt that you got the length that you desired, then after you can cut off that length of yarn that you extracted. And you can think of that as a string. So the value of strings are always surrounded by double quotes. Strings are considered as objects and not primitive data types. So as we mentioned before on the tutorial with data types, strings are objects. They're reference data types and not primitive data types. Because strings are objects, by default, uninitialized strings are null. So let's go into the code editor and just test this out for ourselves. So here in the code editor, we'll just create a string. We'll just call this string message equals hello. Then we'll output this string, and once we get the output, see here that we have the message hello. If a string with different variables has the same value, that represents only one object being created, since both variables are referencing the same object. For example, we have the two variables right here, both strings. One is cal1, which says moo, and cal2, which says moo, both with exclamation points. In this case, since both variables have the same value, there's only one object that's been created. Because of this, strings are immutable. That means that the string objects can't be changed. So changing the string means creating a new instance of that string variable. If we want to be able to change the string, which means make it mutable, then you can use a string buffer and a string builder classes. And those will be discussed in another tutorial. So going back to the code editor, just comment this out. So let's create two strings with the same value. We have cal1 equals moo. Copy this. Cal2 equals moo. And if I output this or run it, so they both say moo, and while you can't see it, they're both pointing to the same object. So even though these are both different variables, they're both pointing to the same value. This you don't necessarily need to understand as you're initially learning Java, but it's good to know for future reference. So here are some examples that we use strings. So one example, and the most common example, is string literal. And this is the most common way to create a string variable. As we did before, we just point to a variable called text1 and give it a string value. So this string text1, we assign it the value of hello universe. So this is the most common way for creating a string variable. Another way you can do this is to create a string object. This type of string creation is much less common. So basically, you just call string text2 equals new string, and then within the parameters, you just input the value that you want. So in this case, input hello universe. This is more common when creating objects, but not when creating strings. And we'll be going over object creation in a future tutorial as well. Another way to create strings, which is also much less common, is to create a character array. This type of string creation, basically you just assign the char data type as an array, and then you just output each character. As we see here, we see hello universe and all the characters, and after that, you create a string object called, in this case, called text3 equals new string, and within the constructor, you would input the char variable character array. This is less efficient, and you're rarely going to see this being done. So as far as creating strings, this is the most common type. Strings come with many useful built-in methods. So here we have some examples, such as string the length method, which just gets the number of characters in a string value. Substring, which you can return the text based on the indexes of the substring. So you can think of, like, let's say you want to get the third index and the sixth index of a word, and then it will only return between that fourth index and the sixth index. So let's say we want to get a word like without, for example. You want to get the fifth index and the seventh index. Or in this case, it would be the fourth index and the sixth index, because Java is a zero-based language. So basically, the first index will start at 0. So if you want to get out and without, you would just try to get the 4th index and the 6th index of that word. Equals basically just checks if the string's value is equal to another string's value. Contains, and then we have other variables like trim, which removes any white space, starts with, end with. Converting to lowercase, we can use this method, and to uppercase. There's so many other string methods, so you don't all need to know all of these off head, but it's good to have a knowledge of some that you use more frequently, just so that you don't have to keep looking at the documentation over and over. You only need what you need to get the job done, basically. So let's test out some of these methods. So here I created 2 variables that are strings. One is initialized as member, and the second variable is initialized as remember. So let's, for example, use the length method to get the length of the first variable. And then when you want to call a method, all you have to do is just put dot, and then after the name of the variable. So in this case, we're putting dot length. So if we run this, we get the number 6, because the number of characters in this variable, it has a count of 6. So let's look at the substring. Let's get the first 3 characters. So here we have first var, and here we want to get the first 3 characters. So we start at 0 because 0 is the first character, and that's pretty much how it is in most programming languages. So basically, you can think of it as you just get the number and then you subtract by 1. So for the substring, the second parameter is exclusive, so it's not inclusive. So if you want to get the first 3 characters, so in this case we MEM, the first parameter would be the 0, which is the beginning of the variable value, and then the third character, or the third index, is exclusive. So basically 0, 1, 2 would be the only indexes we would get, and anything after that, then it wouldn't be included in the value. So here I created a bunch of variables and print statements along with the methods that'll call those values. So here we have our length, we have our substring, we have the equals, contains, trim, starts with, ends with, lowercase and uppercase. So let's run this. All right, so here in our output, we've got the length of a first variable, which is 6. Remember, so member has 6 characters. And then we have the first 3 characters of the first variable, which is the substring from 0 to 3, and we're not including the third index. So here it's 0, 1, and 2. So the equals, basically we check if the second variable, which is remember, is equals to member. In this case, it's false. But if we check if the second variable is contained, or if the first variable is contained in the second variable, so that would be true because member is within remember. The trim variable basically removes any white space. So if you see here, this trim variable, that there's extra space from the beginning and end, and that removes any white space from the beginning and the end. It doesn't remove the spaces within the if there are any other words, but it'll remove any extra space from the beginning of the variable and the end of the variable, but not in between. Starts with checks if the variable starts with what our parameter we give. So in this case, our second variable is remember, and it checks if it starts with rem, but it says it's false. But why is that? Or if you see here, our remember, this has a lowercase r, but this one has an uppercase r. So because the Java sees both those values as not the same, it returns as false. But if we mark this, if we change this to a lowercase r, then it would be marked as true. So if we check here, the next one, we check if it ends with ber, and it does, because ber for the second variable also is the same as the ber that we actually assigned for the second variable. This lowercase method converts any lowercase value to uppercase. So this lowercase method converts this to lowercase method converts any values that are in uppercase to lowercase. So we have this uppercase variable right here, and this is all in uppercase characters. And then once this is passed, it gets converted to lowercase right here. And the same is when we convert to uppercase. So we're calling this to uppercase method from a lowercase variable right here. This is all in lowercase. And then once we run it, then we get all uppercase strings, even though the variable was lowercase. To concatenate strings, which basically means joining strings together, you can add the addition operator or the concat method. It's much easier to use the addition operator, by the way. And that's what's most common as when it comes to concatenating strings. So, for example, we have two variables called hello and universe. If you want to combine these two variables together, then you can just add the plus sign, or you can use the concat method where you call the concat method from one string, and then in the parameter you put in the other variable string, and then after that you would just put the new string. So here we have two variables and we want to join them together. What we can do here is we can use the addition method first. And here I'm going to create an extra space and you'll see why. So when we run this, we get the hello universe. If I didn't include this extra space right here, then what would happen is that this would be combined into one word. So now that we've used the addition operator, let's use the concat method. So as we see here with the concat method, it pretty much works the same way. But again, the plus method is much easier to use in concat method. And as you can see here, I've also used the plus operator within this line output. So even I find that the plus operator is easier to use in the concat method. Escape sequences, strings have to be in double quotes. And that can lead to problems if you want to include a quote within the string. Escape sequences are used to avoid giving the literal value of a character. And this, the backslash character is used to escape that character that you don't want to be literally used. So in this example, we have a string double quotes, and it says, I am emphasizing this word. In this case, this will have quotes inside because we're escaping the quotes character. We can test this out just to confirm. So here we make a print statement. We just call this I am escaping this. So here we have a print line statement called I am escaping this word. So in this case, we're going to be escaping the quotes for this, or it's going to be within quotes. And so if we run this, so now we see that we have the quotes within this word. So if you want to use double quotes within your string, now you know how to do that. So here are some examples for escape characters. So they're pretty much the same way. You just use a backslash along with whatever character that you want to use for escaping. So we have the single quotes, we have the double quotes, backslash, just regular backslash. You just include a backslash after the initial backslash. New lines, also you just use N. Carriage return, which is similar to the new line, use R. And if you want to tab, then you can use T after the backslash. So let's test out that example. So here we'll make a print statement. We just call this testing out, tabbing, say this actually works with a lot of exclamations. So here we have the result. We were able to do a tab escape using the backslash T. See here that tab actually works. All right, so our assignment for strings. So number one, what type of characters are string values surrounded by? Number two, what does it mean for something to be mutable? Are strings mutable? This is a two-part question. Number three, write a string statement that uses a tab escape character. Number four, write a statement that concatenates three string variables. You can use either the addition operator, the concat variable, or even both at the same time. Number five, write a statement that retrieves the 5th index up to the 10th index of a string variable. If this video was of any value to you, then please leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.